Ladies and gentlemen, I am Kurt Clendenin with KaPow IFF 2021. We are talking with Alice. Now, Alice, how do we pronounce your last name? Is it Airnaldi?
So actually, my name is also pronounced Alice. I always forget to say it.
Alice?
Because yeah, you got it. And my last name is like Airoldi.
Airoldi.
Hmm.
And so Alice here created the same story, which I think is just a wonderful movie, and I think you all need to check out. Now, Alice, what were some of the beginning seeds that were planted in your brain that started growing this idea?
Hmm. Well, I was really inspired by this very specific time in Italian history. I'm from Italy, which were they were named the years of lead because they were a very tumultuous times that happened towards the end of the 60s and then into the 70s of social unrest that translated to terrorism, especially from this left-wing organization. And what's really fascinating about it is that they actually had a pretty high approval rate among the population, especially at the beginning, because there was this, I think the idea of class struggle and class solidarity was very strong at the time in Italy. And so this idea of, these terrorists are fighting for us and they are targeting the people who are screwing us over was very popular. But there was a turn when there were a couple things that happened, the kidnapping of this very famous politician and then the killing of this said politician that kind of like turned the tide. And so people started distancing themselves from this group. Um, but and so all of this to say, I've always been fascinated with these movements that fight for a cause that they think to be good, and in doing so cross so many moral lines for themselves and for others. And it then becomes an individual choice of where do you draw the line for yourself and how far you're willing to go and do. And this was a fascination that I really had in high school. I mean, starting very early on. And then I encountered the writing of this Italian writer Antonio Tabucchi, who talks about relationships and how time affects relationships in a way that really captivated me. So all of this is kind of like how the same story came together. I wanted to tell the story about changing relationship and time, and about how these events affect us in our relationships and questions that we have to ask ourselves when we are faced with these big social movements.
So you wrote it, you edited it, and you directed it. I mean, what's that like to wear so many hats? Because I'm already imagining, like, if you're on set and you're directing it, and if you know that you're going to edit it, you're like, okay, I know exactly how that's going to cut into this. And like, did you have that kind of foresight, or I mean, what happened? How did that work?
I definitely had that. I edited most of my work. I love editing. I mean, what I usually do is freelance editing just for a living. So it was definitely helpful. And again, it's sorry, my dog is snoring outside, but it was interesting to wear so many hats. In a way, it made it easier because it was a big a big thing that I was undertaking. It was the first time I'd ever directed, such a big set. And knowing that I was the one who would have then to deal with it, in a way, gave me more confidence. I was lucky to work with a great DIT. I wanted him on set, like absolutely. And oh my god, a cat! What is happening?
Oh
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
we
I
have
just realized. Wait a second. Let me
a cat.
just press pause on the recording really fast. Let me get my cat out of
Okay.
here. One sec.
But and I have a
All right.
cat too, so I was like,
Oh,
anyway.
you have a cat too?
Oh yeah. He's somewhere. I don't know where, but
It's
yeah, I love
it's always great to have the companions around, you know, and whether you got a
it.
dog or a cat, it's just like there's a certain language that can happen between you, which is just to me just fascinating.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So
Hmm.
you, I mean, this is impressive for you to be able to write, direct, and edit this project. You had so many people in this movie. You
Hmm.
had quite a few different locations, you know. So like the fact that you were, I guess, brave enough to lack for a better word, brave enough to be able to go, okay, I'm going to step into this thing that I've for the first time,
Hmm.
and I got all these people, and I got all these different locations. I mean, how did you keep yourself sane through that process?
It was a couple of different things. I think part of it comes down to the fact that I really wanted to tell this story, and I knew that this was my actually graduating film in college. So this was my BFA final project, and I knew that I had all these resources that were available to me that would not have been available all the time. So there was this urgency, and then I knew that I wanted to tell the story. I for a couple of years, this had been in me, and I've been working on the script, and I knew I couldn't really move on to something else until I had told it. And the fact that so many people were working with me actually pushed me to get it done. Like, I knew that if I had fallen through, it wouldn't have just been, okay, the film doesn't exist. It's like I would have let all of these people down, like would most of, really all of them volunteered their time. And so in a way, it was kind of like sometimes when I felt like I didn't want to, it was too much and I wanted to give up, I was like, okay, at least I'm going to do it for them. And I had such a great experience with my crew and my cast, so it was easy to do it for them because I knew them, and I really, had a great relationship with all of them.
So you just gave me a key here. Okay, so you're saying that you made this film while you're at college. So in other words, you looked around and you go, okay, I have these resources available to me. I'm going to make sure that I really, because there's nothing worse than feeling that regret later in life, going, oh, why didn't I use that? So the fact that
Mhm.
you embraced that and did the best you could with what you had, I just think is fantastic.
Yeah, no, yeah, thank you. I mean, it's really one of those things. I moved from Italy to the United States to study film, so I feel like it's always been in the forefront of my mind, the thing of, I'm here, I'm far from home. It was so hard to leave and to be here, so at least I'm gonna make the most out of it that I can. That's always been a big motivation, I think. So.
Well, your cast had a really good rapport with each other. Did you guys go do any improv games or rehearsals beforehand, or how did you get that rapport so good between them?
Hmm. We totally did. Actually, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna text my roommates to tell them to be quiet since this is a recording. If it's okay, if you could
Oh yeah,
kind of
yeah, that's fine.
record. I just realized that I haven't told them. In this such a small apartment, I can hear everyone wake up. Mm. So yeah, my cast, they didn't know each other to begin with. I think two of them had been in a class together. Two of them went to my same university. The third one, this was actually his first film. The guy playing Fred, he comes from theater. And I definitely wanted to have some, improv and some rehearsals beforehand because I knew that if their relationships didn't look genuine, it really wasn't gonna work. That was really what was gonna sell the story. And so it was interesting because we had the first rehearsal, and I remember I was so nervous, so I went into it kind of being like, oh, let's just read the script, and then we'll try a scene, and of course, we tried with the most lighter scenes and things like that, but we were all a little stuck. And so I remember after we just went to take a lunch break, we went to Panera or something and we had lunch and we just chatted. And when we came back, it was like we had unlocked everything and like we had the best rehearsal. And it was so interesting because we all said, wow, we all needed just to sit with one another and just be people for a second, which was very interesting. And so after that, I think we had three more rehearsals. Obviously, the scene that we rehearsed the most was the big argument in the room at the end of the film. But really, their relationships grew on set. Um, I think from the first shooting days, I mean, the first thing that we shot is the meeting with all the other students. And so there's a lot of downtime for the three main characters. It was a very weird way of starting the film because they started by just sitting and being background for 5 hours, basically, which is, again, it's funny because it's a very, I don't know. Obviously, if I had to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't start by putting my, main actors on the background for the whole day.
Well, I
But
think
then
what's
give
cool
them
though
like
is that the
time.
fact that you did do it that way, I just got to say, sorry to interrupt you, but I think what's great, the fact that you did do it that way, you put them into the
Mhm.
mindset of really what the rest of the movie was kind of hinged upon. That meeting is what really
Yeah.
started this whole domino effect of things happening.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. I think if anything, it helped by in a way, I think a lot of actors have a lot of stage fright when it comes, especially, they all come from theater. So the idea of, except for one of them who had done a lot of short films, but I think maybe if we had started by a big moment close up, it would have been more pressuring for them. But yeah, in a way. And also, that scene, the way that we shot the meeting scene was interesting because most of those people were just extras and like friends of friends and random people. So it was a lot of, learning lines on the day. And it was a lot of me just like hyping them up and then having them kind of like come out of their shell. So it was a lot of playing with them and then just capturing that when it happened. And I think if anything, it set the tone for for the main cast of, this is we're gonna have fun. We're gonna try and see what happens and what comes out of it. And then they really became friends by the final weekend. I remember, not even, yeah, no, by the final weekend, I remember the crew was, everyone was convinced that they had been the best of friends for their whole lives. So when they said
Wow.
that they met for this production, everyone was really blown away by that, which
And how
was
cool is that? You're the one who helped magnetize these people together, and now they're like, we're soulmates, man. I just think that's so cool. You did a great job too. The camera angles you chose, the cinematography was great too.
Mm.
I remember specifically there's a shot where they're running down to the beach, and it's cool. It was like this optical illusion. I remember when I first saw it, and I'm like, what's going on with the sky? The sky is rippling, you know? And I was like, okay, how am I supposed to be looking at this? And then it's great. And then the camera pans up and you revealed, oh, we're at the beach. That's the ocean. So that was a really cool.
Nice. Yeah, thank
That
you.
was a really cool shot. Did you already
Mhm.
pre-plan that that's how that shot was gonna go?
Um, we did. It was interesting. I think, well, Jesse, the cinematographer, did such an amazing job, and I think the scene that we planned the most, where that scene was actually one of the least planned scenes in a way. Something that we planned a lot was the protest, but that scene was actually supposed to happen in a cafe originally. But then I realized when I was rewriting and everything that, I was like, I need to take them outside more. Like, these people are always talking inside. And so I remember we found that location, like, a couple weeks before shooting. And when I saw how the cliff went down, I was like, okay, I definitely want a shot that starts like this. And then that was the only shot that was planned. Everything else, we kind of went along with it. And that shot, it was funny because it took a couple of try. Well, that hill is quite steep, so I remember like the actors were very, they
Were
kind
they
of
like
like ran
sliding
down
down?
and ran with it. But like the first times they did it, I was like, oh my god! I was like, be careful, and like they were down for anything, so it was great. But that shot, yeah, that really, I love the idea of revealing this beautiful, like, huge lake. But and yeah, it's funny because then it's one of those things, like, that shot is a little shaky, it's not very clean. And I had some people be like, I think you should take it out. But I'm glad that you mentioned it,
Oh, I
because
loved it.
I
It was
love it
great
too.
because
Yeah.
the because I was in my brain, I'm like, okay, what? Okay, so they're on the beach, but holy cow, look at that sky. The sky looked like it was rippling, and then the reveal is
Yeah.
like, oh, this is the ocean. So I thought that I just loved that. That was like one of my favorites. And I'm glad that you brought him outside, because you should, to show that playfulness with him, to show him, hey, we're just kids. We're playing around. And then all of a sudden they accidentally get into a very deep situation that's like, it's all fun and games until, as the old phrase goes, it's all fun and games till someone loses an eye. So they're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
let's throw these fiery bottles. And, that's fine when you're talking, they're imagining, oh yeah, yeah, revolution in a very safe environment. But
Yeah.
then once it really gets down to it, and they're in the middle
Mhm.
of this, it's like there are people shooting at them, and now cops are coming around, and it's like, oh, what do we get ourselves into? And I love the foreshadowing that you do. There's this little line
Mhm.
that's great, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna lose an entire semester over someone's incompetence. So at first he's bothered about the fact that, oh gosh, I'm in a law class, and they're like, oh, you'd be a great lawyer, not realizing that in the
Mhm.
future they're gonna need a lawyer. So it was just the showing without telling, all that stuff was just great. It was great. You see
Good.
from the back, from the back view in the courtroom, and you just see him playing with the glasses. Then it cuts to the scene with him playing with the glasses there in the restaurant, and you showed without telling. I mean, it was just great.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that moment with the glasses really came together during the editing process, actually. It's funny because I wanted him, and it's funny because after the fact, I've had my sound mixer, actually, he was like, as someone with glasses, I would never play with my glasses like that, which is kind of funny. I was like, yeah, that's a fair point. But I think what happened was, in one of the scenes, I think in the first scene we ever shot, he didn't have his glasses on. He kind of forgot about them. So I was like, it's okay. Your thing will be that you play with your glasses in your hand. And
Oh,
so we
that's
kept
great.
that throughout the film. Yeah, and then in the editing process, I chopped up the film a lot in the editing compared to how it was in the script. And so I don't know how it came to my mind, but I was like, well, we could use the glasses as a connecting thing. I don't know if it was me or my assistant editor, and yeah, it ended up working great. So, but that
What's
came together
that like
pretty
when
quick.
you?
Mhm.
Because I'm imagining, okay, you spend all this time working on the script, and then there are different stages that happen. So you're
Yeah.
toiling over what the script's going to be. Then you're on set. So now there's this whole other element where people are like, ooh, what if my character, just always has like an itchy cheek or whatever? Okay, sure. What the hell? Throw that in there. I didn't write that in the script. Okay, that's your little character trait. And then it comes time for editing. So now you're like, it's a whole nother morphing process where you're going, I mean, what was that like for you to look at it and go, okay, this is how the script is, but I'm going to edit it like this. I'm just going to chop it up into pieces because that was cool. The flash forward, the flash back. You didn't know. It kept you on your toes, and it kept the viewer kind of like a detective. So, what was that like when it came time for your editing process to go? Okay, I just got to chop it all up, and let's just see what happens.
Well, it's interesting because the first draft of the script was very choppy. The first draft of the script is similar to how the film is right now.
Oh,
But then I remember I was in a workshop class, and there was a fear that it was going to be too choppy. And so I had, it's so funny because in the script, I had planned a lot of visual transitions. But then as I was rewriting, I kind of went back to making it more linear. So then the first edit was very linear. But well, first off, I don't think it was I think it was a little boring to look at it like that. But then people thought it was just going to be kind of like courtroom film, quote unquote. So they were like, oh, we don't see the resolution in the courtroom, so we don't really know what's up. And there's a lot more of the courtroom that we shot. Initially it was going to be like courtroom and then like a bunch of flashbacks and then the ending in the courtroom. So then exactly, people were expecting more. So to take importance away from the courtroom, I chopped it up and I used it to connect a bunch of scenes. So in a way, it was kind of going back to my original idea. So it was an idea that I had had all along. So it was easier to go back to something that I knew what it was in my brain already, and that I thought was not going to work. But then I was like, oh, maybe this could work. So
and it's astounding. You never know what's going to happen until you do it right. You never know.
yeah,
You never
oh
know
yeah,
what the
yeah,
path
yeah.
is going to look like till you start carving it. You know. So the
Exactly. And
fact
that's,
that
oh
you were
yeah,
so loose with it, I mean, it was just great.
oh yeah, and that's why you always get extra coverage. Honestly, it's all there is. Like giving yourself the options. Yeah.
Gosh, so that courtroom was that someplace at the college, or did you rent out an actual courtroom? How did you do that?
We were so lucky. Me and my producer and I just kind of like drove around. We were in Boston and we drove around just looking for a good courtroom. And we were just, I'm not sure what our plan was because we had a feeling. I think our teacher told us, it's illegal to shoot in courtrooms. They're not going to let you do it, but you are students and you are young, so you might be able to wing it. And that's what happened. The first one we visited was in Peabody in Massachusetts, and you didn't need to visit anything else because that courtroom was built in like 74 or something, and the design of it was perfect. It screamed 70s, and I was like, okay, amazing. And we spoke with the main clerk there or something, and they said that actually when we were planning on shooting there was going to be a judge conference or something, so the courtroom was mostly going to be empty. They were just going to be like normal hearings in one of the rooms. So it all worked out. So they were like, oh, we want to, it was one of those things where you go in very innocently and you say, we're doing a school project, and they go, oh, we want to help a school project, and then and then you're like, okay, so we have a full truck of equipment. But they were so chill with it, and for a couple of times it looked like it was going to be more complex because we needed the approval of the county clerk, something like that. But I think the main guy of the courtroom was really on our side, and so he made it happen. And yeah, I don't know. I can't explain it other than like pure luck, but it was an actual courtroom. So
The universe just really lined up for you on this one, didn't it? It just sounds
yeah,
like everything was just
yeah.
unfolding in a great way. Now, what other kinds of projects do you got hiding up your sleeves that
Mhm.
either dream projects you want to create or something that you're like, "Ooh, I'm ready, I'm ready to go deep into this one right now."
Yeah, well, I'm actually producing a documentary right now, and it's a very different kind of project. It's a nonfiction film. It's an experimental documentary. I'm producing it with a good friend of mine who's a writer and director, and it's all about it's a story of immigration, of being an immigrant in the United States, and it's both his story of becoming an immigrant and then the story of a community of Brazilians who live in Boston. It's actually the biggest Brazilian community outside of Brazil, and so we want to document that story, but through just telling the story. We want it to be a story about people, not about legislations, basically. And yeah, so that's the main thing I'm doing right now. We're gonna start a crowdfunding soon, so keep your eyes out for that. But that's the main thing I'm focusing on, and then I have other things, but they're not ready to come out yet as fully formed ideas.
Well, I gotta say, I think it's so. I always get excited when I see period pieces, and I think that takes some courage to be able to go, all right, you know what? on top of never doing this whole kind of thing before, let's add another layer of a period piece. So what was that like, finding the various production design, finding the various costumes and stuff? I mean, where did you go out to thrift stores? Did you go to someone who was like a 70s aficionado? How'd you find that stuff?
Hmm. Um, no, it's an interesting thing because a lot of people tried to talk me out of it early on. And we actually received a grant from the school to make this film, which really is what made it was, we were able to take it to the next level. And it's funny because again, like people tried to talk to me out of it, and the school was also unsure about the amount of locations. But I think my teacher at the time, he really pulled through for us and advocated for us to get this grant. And but it was mostly thrift shops. I mean, I knew that the kind of aesthetic I wanted to reproduce was, I wanted people to be dressed the way that people were dressed in the streets in the late 60s. So I didn't want anything too flashy. And I knew that those clothes are still around and Goodwills and things like that. So it was all of me and my costume designers are Alberto and Kyle, just going to Goodwill, for a whole afternoon and getting anything from, and they were so excited about it. And I love that, they both had such a strong aesthetic sense. They would be like, oh, I found this great belt, blah, blah, I found this pair of glasses. Like, it was really like all in the details. And then we had costumes for the main characters. Like we had, day one, day two, blah, blah, blah. And then we had a bunch of just extra stuff for the extras. So I think every time we had extras, they would all go to Kyle and he would be like, okay, I think I'm going to give you this sweater, I'm going to give you this jacket. But it was mostly that. And then for the policeman, that was the hardest part. And, I made this film in Boston and I didn't really know how to tap into the resources of, film communities and everything. I feel like now I would be a little better at it, but also the Northeast doesn't really have such a big. It's not like here in LA. It's all, everything is smaller, and a lot of it is just people, finding things in the trash. You know what I mean? It's not as organized. But the policemen were really like, oh my God, it was like the day of, we didn't really have anything. So it all came down to being like, you know what, they will be silhouettes. Like all I had were like helmets because I'd seen so much footage from the time. And I knew that, like police at the time, there used to be helmets and a badge, which is great. And so we had a couple of batons, like plastic batons, bought at a costume store, a couple of like very fake looking badges. So it was all about, they will be silhouettes, they will be fast, and that's it.
Well, that was a brilliant way to shoot that scene too, because you added in a fog. There's all this mystery going on. Some of these
Yeah.
close-ups, with the shadows, so you're implying what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think it was great. You did a great job. Really
Yeah.
stretching your resources.
Yeah, I mean, again, in that scene, it was interesting. What I did really was going back to, okay, what have other small productions done for protest scenes? Like that's all it was. So that's the scene in a way that we planned the most. Like I knew that there were a couple of ways of hiding the fact that I didn't have that many extras. It was like, tighter shots, long shadows. I knew I wanted that, and then smoke, and that fills the empty space. So it really like I knew that I needed that to sell it. And so once we had that, it worked out.
Oh my gosh, Alice! Thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. This has just been so great, and
Yeah,
any of
thank
you
you.
who are watching, please check this movie out because it's so it's really cool. It's really cool. It shows you what's possible when you really utilize your resources. So make sure you check out The Same Story by Alice Airoldi. And what's your other alias name? Your other last name that you use?
Like my name, I pronounce my name Alicia, so Alicia or Alice, either or. And
Oh, Alicia. That's how we pronounce your first name.
yeah,
Alicia.
but it's fine. I go by either, honestly. I mean, they are the same name, so
Well, thank
yeah.
you so much for taking the time to talk today. And this has just been so cool.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Wow.